happy to welcome you to our latest episode of Frontlines Corner. And as has become a big favor for me, we've invited a special guest on today to join us, Dana Shraf, the founder and CEO of inCitu, which is one of our very own portfolio companies. I've been working with Dana for a few years now and continually impressed by not only her capability and her story, which we're going to learn a little bit about, but her vision. And I say that with two meanings because that's really a core part of her company, but her vision for the future and for the cities that many of us live in. So Dana, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you, Oliver, for having me. Thank you, everyone, for listening in.
Awesome. So, as we frequently do in this setting, I want to just start with introducing our audience a little bit to you and your story. You have a very unusual way of having arrived today here with us and, extraordinary life experience. So maybe just, for a couple minutes, share a little bit of your journey, your story, and how you come to be here today.
Of course. So I'm Dana. I'm now based in New York. I live in Brooklyn for the past 6.5 years. I'm originally from Tel Aviv, Israel. I was an architect before moving to New York. I studied architecture in Tel Aviv University and practiced as an architect in the city center of Tel Aviv for 6 years before moving. And I moved to New York to study urban data science in NYU, CASP, Center for Urban Science and Progress. What made me do that transitioning is my frustration from urban development. As an architect in Tel Aviv, and I don't know who here knows this city, but it's small and pretty hectic urban development realm. I felt that so much is going on around us in the kind of city planning, urban development. The city is changing, and it's changing not only due to architects or planners, it's changing due to historic and economic forces and, of course, grassroots and top-down. Everything together kind of like reflects in urban change. And the more I became a professional, the more I felt that I walk in the street and I can just see the future. I just knew that this will be built here, this will be built there, this can be built here. And I had this moment of clarity of, this is all publicly available information. Why am I the only one who can see it? So I came to architecture after 3 years in the Israeli Air Force as a flight simulator trainer. So I came from this experience of simulators and kind of training people in their most natural way. On very complex processes. And I couldn't not think of how we can apply this approach to communicating more effectively urban planning processes with stakeholders, with communities, with city planners, with everyone that needs to be aligned to allow for better urban development. And I kept walking down the street and thinking to myself, this should be as natural as just raising your phone, looking up. As we see existing physical environment, built environment, we should be able to see the future of our built environment. Fast forward to New York, after graduation here, I did a short internship in the Department of City Planning in New York. Quickly understood that things that I knew are broken in Tel Aviv are also broken here in the urban development realm, just bigger. And that was to me the gong to kind of go back to that old vision and try to build it into a company and a product. I was very lucky to be selected to be an entrepreneur in residence at the Eric Schmidt Futures Foundation mid-COVID, mid-2020. That's how I knew you, Oliver. I was again lucky to get you as my first coach. And that's how we met, that's how we started working together, and that's how inCitu was eventually founded. And during that time there, I was able to found the company, build the first version of the product, raise the initial money, and start building this into a reality.
Well, it's an incredible story. And yeah, I reflect back, I do a fair amount of coaching and mentoring, as you know, and I've always think of it as a two-way street, and never more true than with you. I've learned so much from you and your experience and from the walk that we have been on to help co-build inCitu with you. So so much to unpack there, but one thing that comes to mind is when you think about building new things in cities, there's that mental image of the community board meeting where everyone's screaming at each other and, somebody is sitting there saying, well, I won't be able to see the sun in the same way. I actually literally just had, by the way, in my co-op board, a meeting where there was a joke, but it wasn't really a joke, where someone was like, could you please move the building next door so we get more sun in the garden? And it's like, of course, that's the question. But at the heart of what I'm asking you is, the not in my backyard, that immediate, kind of combat between the future of the city and the existing residents. Obviously, everybody has a bit of a point there, right? Like, you don't want to just change things willy-nilly, and people do treasure the things that they love about the place they live, but there also has to be progress. Is that maybe one of the kind of pathways in for inCitu, is to try and kind of understand everyone's viewpoint and provide a way forward where you have this shared vision?
Absolutely. And I think the process today is allegedly open, right? You have public hearings, you have community meetings, you have ways for people to engage, but the process is designed for a very specific chunk or cohort of the community. And these are the people that have the time and resources to come to these planning hearings, to read through the 400 pages PDF that the agency or the developer shares up front, right? The young parents, young families, students, social work, essential workers, people with 2 jobs, or high schoolers that do care about their communities and do have opinions, I assume, usually don't even know about these public hearings and meetings. But even if they do, they will not have the time to be there from 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. and listen to it. I always joke, and again, not a joke, and say that even me, that I think that zoning is the most interesting thing in the world, I also have 3 young kids here at home, so I can't join these meetings at 7 p.m. for the next decade, right? So the process is not really open to the representative audience of the communities that need to chime in with their opinions. And the difference here with inCitu is that we take this conversation and not replace it. I think these meetings are very important and they should stay there, but we complement them with an on-the-street, highly accessible view of the future, enabling the experience of future developments on the street, on their future sites, in real scale, through simply scanning a QR code. So you can walk down the street, you scan the QR, you see the project, and you can also put in your comments as you walk down the street. So one, we balance the NIMBY, not in my backyard type of voices, with much broader, more representative, more diverse audience. And 2, we saw time after time in our projects that we already enrolled in New York and beyond and outside of New York, that even amongst the opposers or the more anxious people about development, and we should, as you say, respect these concerns, right? People have their point if they are concerned about the light or the shadow or the safety industry. Amongst these opposers or concerned people, we see time after time that they raise their phone, it pops up, and they're like, oh, that's not too bad. That's not what I thought, right? Like it's much more human scale, and I can explore, I can walk around it, and suddenly, very naturally, the conversation gets to the point. They start asking where the transit will go through, or where the entrance is at. And these are questions that you want to welcome to the table, more than, oh, should it be 7 or 9 stories, or 31 or 32? And I think we architects or planners, we always share these visuals in a Photoshop rendering at the best case scenario from the bird's eye view, which is very stupid of us to do. Like, none of us will ever experience these projects from the sky. So why shouldn't we allow the experience from the street level and letting people actually walk through the future?
Those of you who haven't tried this, by the way, you should find a way to experience this application. It's pretty cool. I have a building going up next door, and I was able to experience it. And it is like taking a step through into the future. It's like it's already there. So, and the best thing about it is it's kind of, you don't need the full VR headset and everything. It's just right through your smartphone. So it's very cool. But, this leads me to the point, perhaps, that cities are facing maybe some of the most complex set of challenges they have before. And obviously there's some very long-term challenges like climate change, and some very present ones like, can people even afford to live here anymore? And so are there ways in particular that inCitu and your work is driven by a broader mission around these huge challenges that face cities? How do you think about how this knits into affordability, how you think about combating climate change? Are these some of the things that are front of mind for you as you're building?
Absolutely. And I think these issues are making our mission much more urgent, because when planning is very slow and counterproductive, eventually it can cost lives, right? And something that we're doing with certain clients, when it gets to let's take, for example, the climate issues, let's say a seawall that we're now bringing to life in Charleston, South Carolina, a city that became one of our first pilot cities. They have in the historic Charleston a seawall that's supposed to, of course, keep the historic city from flooding. Of course, there is opposition from the community, and we're not only showing the physical new structure of the seawall, we can also show and animate the no action scenario. And the no action scenario doesn't mean that nothing will happen, right? The no action can be the city is flooded and you're underwater. So this is something that is very important to be able to communicate to people, because people very naturally, they think that, okay, if we oppose to this, we don't want this, everything will stay the same. But it's not always like that, of course. And we should mitigate, we should change building codes, we should elevate buildings or build seawalls in order to prevent our cities from being underwater. So this is one. On the affordability side, here in New York, and you talked about the building near you, that's maybe a good point to know that we have 4,000 buildings in New York that we brought to life in AR. We took all the permits data from the Department of Buildings of new constructions, run them through our pipeline. Everything is now available in their future sites. And looking kind of in the big vision of New York, Mayor Adams declared his moonshot goal of adding 500,000 housing units to New York City in the next decade. This number is frightening to people. It's a huge number. People are saying where this will come, right? How this will impact my community. And being able to communicate this big number on the street level, on the block level, is very kind of more human-centered approach, very human scale. And I think in this 4,000 project that we brought to life in New York, there are actually, according to the data, to the public data, 175,000 housing units. And suddenly walking down your street and seeing this building and then another building, and understanding that here you'll have 20 new housing units, here you'll have an addition of 50 or 15. It's, again, something that people can digest much better.
I think that's really exciting. You know, it's funny, I was giving an interview the other day US on climate change, and there's a stark difference. Obviously everyone's trying to reduce emissions, but China's also doing a lot of this mitigation adaptation work. So we're working about mitigating climate change. How do we get carbon out of the air? And China's already ahead of the game on thinking of adaptation. What do you do? And so this the Charleston project is fascinating. Just reflecting on how this past year has been as a startup founder, and obviously acknowledging too, especially since you're from Tel Aviv, the last few weeks has been particularly stressful for a lot of reasons that we all know. What's the journey been like for you in the last year? And maybe are there calls to action or things that you want to share with your community, with the cities you work with, that you want to kind of leave our community?
Yes, and thank you for acknowledging that, of course. I think the world is becoming crazier and crazier. The past year was hectic, let's say. And I think, it becomes more and more clear and urgent how democracy is important, how we need to fight populism, and we need to fight for diversity, for civility, for better conversations. And I truly believe that with everything that we in inCitu developing, it's not about the technology, it's about how the technology enables better collaboration, better conversations, more positive partnerships between different stakeholders. We are all different people trying to live our lives in cities or around them, and we all have opinions. We all want to build and plan for a better future for ourselves, for our kids. I believe better technology can enable better conversations. I think it's very urgent to allow for cities to stay affordable, because in cities you find the diversity, and when you find diversity, you find more tolerant people to each other. And I think that's important in these days. And for inCitu, the past year, we never been a regular company, or I've never been a regular founder. I'm not checking any box of entrepreneur. I did not even work in a startup before I became a CEO of my own startup. So I think, it was never very easy for me to raise money or to pitch for the classic investors. And I think I want to acknowledge how HL is unique in that sense of like seeing through you, like seeing really who you are, what you bring to the table, and really kind of acknowledging that, appreciating that, and also helping you celebrate the unique point of view that you bring. And to me, I just kept doing that, and we saw how when the private sector and real estate became very messy, suddenly government became more stable to work with. And luckily for inCitu, we can work with both. We can work with individual private partners on specific developments to bring them to life. We can work with city agencies to effectively integrate to their planning process. And we're doing that today in DC, in Washington, DC, with the Department of Buildings, that we're piloting with them. We're talking about next steps of just being part of the process. Every new applicant will submit their 3D model and it will be out there. So my call to action, one, for everyone in a city or working in a city, whether you're a local partner, private partner, or in a city agency, we're piloting and expanding through cities. Just last weekend, we launched San Francisco, and we launched San Francisco in only a few hours. So we took the data and we are out there with 96 projects of real developments ready in AR. So reach out if you want your city's future to be available. And for founders out there, I encourage you to stay strong and keep up the good spirit. Use our place, our power to promote peace, better conversations again, democracy, and safety for all.
It's a wonderful sentiment for us to end on, Donna. Thank you so much for joining us. I wanted to add, you said something right at the beginning of that answer that really landed for me, which is I think there's a fundamental kind of beautiful and authentic optimism that inCitu and that your entrepreneurship is bringing to the table, which is that people, when given the ability to see the future and have good information, will then make good decisions. And that kind of faith in people is a wonderful thing to see in the world. And so I hope that in the future, everyone's raising their phones to see the future of their cities through your hard work. And with that, thank you so much. We'll see you all again soon.